I'm Bill Lenderman. This is one of a series of monthly discussions to be held one time a month on Friday, 9 a.m. Mountain Time. The purpose of the discussions is to provide insights into concepts people may not know or don't fully understand, to correct misconceptions about important issues, and to build a community of wise and thoughtful people who know how to use money as a tool. When this portion of the discussion is finished, I'll open up for people who are able to attend live. I'll open up the discussion to those who would like to participate. I'm going to switch topics now to the fourth topic. Remember, there is transfers, savings, investments, and gambling. Let me define gambling. Gambling is when you're throwing money down on the table on the chance you'll make a lot of money, but the probability you'll lose it. Let me give you some examples. One would be Las Vegas. It's pretty obvious, isn't it? You throw your money on the roulette table and probably isn't going to come back. You look at those beautiful buildings that are built there. They're built on on gamblers who lost, and the whole thing is set up for the house to make money and the gamblers to lose. I attended a meeting 2 weeks ago in Las Vegas, and they force you to walk through the slot machines and the gambling tables when you want to go to a meeting or a restaurant or anything else. And the most pitiful group of people sitting there, a lot of them old, out of shape. There wasn't a smile in the room anytime I ever passed through one of these rooms. They're just throwing their money dime after dime, quarter after quarter, dollar after dollar into a hole, and it's not coming back. That's gambling. A second example is the Wall Street Casino. It's really no different than Las Vegas, except you don't get to sit down and drink while you're throwing your money away. Just as an example, in the last 14 years, I have met hundreds of people who have been invested over that time. Not a single one has as much money now as they had 14 years ago. Now, I don't deny there must be people who have made money in this last 14 years, but they must be very, very scarce. What's the difference between that and Las Vegas? Every once in a while somebody hits the jackpot in Las Vegas, but for every one there are thousands who lose. It's gambling because you have absolutely no control over what happens when you put your money down. You can do it if you want to, but recognize you're gambling. An awful lot of people are gambling their futures by putting the money into mutual funds and other things over which they have no control and where they are going to lose part or all of their money. And that's the wrong way to approach it. Take a look at this chart. In the last 14 years, you can see that the average annual gain over a 14-year period is 1.9% in the stock market. Well, think about this. That doesn't include taxes. The taxes could be anywhere from a third to a half of this figure. So a person who has gone through the ups and downs of the stock market in the last 14 years and stuck with it has been in a losing position a great deal of the time, and after tax probably hasn't made much more than 1% a year. Now compare that to savings. If a safe account with honest banking could produce 5% tax-free and never a loss. Imagine this chart being a roller coaster. Up, 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 wham, down. Up, 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 wham, down. If that were an actual roller coaster, an individual, when he hit the bottom of those downs, his neck would break. And you have to ask, is it worth gambling the money with the hope of making more when you go through such a rough roller coaster ride and end up with such small results? Another example would be bonds. A bond is nothing more than a piece of paper acknowledging that you have lent money to somebody, a company or a government. You have no control over what happens next. Our government is broke and can never pay its debts. Never. There's no possibility that will ever happen. It's safer probably now, ironically, to invest in bonds in companies which are profitable and which can be expected to remain profitable in the future. But recognize, at some point, interest rates will begin to rise, and when they do, bonds become a graveyard for money, even if the companies that are still paying the interest on the bonds and still have the capability to pay the money back when the bond is finished. Even though that is true, you have no control over the process, and you might have to wait for years or decades before you can get your money back under unfavorable circumstances. The government itself has at least $205 trillion in money they have promised to pay out with things like Social Security and all kinds of welfare benefits. That's in addition to more than $17 trillion that is the actual national debt, and the trillion or so that they're getting further in debt every single year. Understand that with all this money owed, there's only about $4 trillion, the best I can figure, 4 trillion American dollars existing in the United States. And in the entire world, only about 7 trillion. At some point, we're going to have a crisis because $7 trillion cannot pay $205 trillion in debts and obligations. The next gamble is Social Security and Medicare and other government programs. Sadly, we're forced by law. We're forced by a guy with holding a gun to put our money into those programs. And many, many people are going to find out that the money has been confiscated because the government is going to renege on these promises. They have no other choice. So any money, I know people who've gone to work so that they could get Social Security benefits when they retire. They would be better off ducking Social Security and setting the money aside in their own funds, because at least they can have access to those funds. Social Security and all these other programs will eventually fail or become meaningless, and everybody is forced to pay for them. The next gamble is tax-qualified plans, all kinds. IRAs, Roth IRAs, pension plans, profit-sharing plans, KEOs, SEPs, Simples, health savings accounts, 403Bs, TSAs, all of those. You have the risk of losing the money that you have invested. You've given the money away to somebody else to control your entire life when you most need it. There's a risk of higher taxation as more and more people lose their jobs and more people look for government benefits. The remaining people are going to have their taxes raised. You can bet on that. There's a strong possibility of confiscation. In the last 8 years, 8 countries have confiscated the money that people have set aside for their own private pensions. The last one was Poland in September of 2013. Our government has been considering confiscating these funds for at least 11 years now. Nancy Pelosi, several weeks ago, proposed a windfall profits tax. So after all the taxes and penalties paid on these things when people try to remove their money, she wants to add another tax on top of that, which would effectively destroy the value of any of these accounts. Think about these accounts. There are people who, when you open an account like these, there are people who get paid. The government's always going to be paid its taxes. They have no risk. The managers who manage the money are going to be paid their fees and penalties under certain circumstances. Wall Street will get paid every time a product is bought or sold, whether you win or lose. All these people make money. The only one who is at risk is the person who puts his money into these accounts. There's no guarantee whatsoever for the profits that they hope to make, but there's an absolute guarantee everybody else will make money, not necessarily them. And the president's last speech on the status of the nation, he talked about an automatic IRA, which every individual will be automatically signed up to when he goes to work for a given company. This is one step towards confiscation, because these IRAs, though apparently they would be temporarily available to those who wish to do it. Eventually they will become required, and then they will be confiscated. They can only be invested in government bonds, which means that American people, workers, are going to be forced to buy the debt of the American government, which cannot be paid back. They provide low interest, they're fully controlled by the government, and at death, the government inherits the money. So that's a backdoor confiscation. I certainly invite you to ask your questions. You can unmute yourself now, ask your questions, or make your comments. We can enjoy a lively discussion. Thank you.